Hi, we're going to attempt to do something new, and that is flipping American government. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with the very beginning, a very good place to start, and discuss the qualities of a state. These are the government basics. You should have in front of you at this time the guided reading notes that accompany your book, uh, Chapter 1, Section 1, and you'll fill those out as we go through today's lesson. Okay. One of the principles of government is like kind of understanding how did people start to study government. And Aristotle was one of our very first students of government. Greece contributed much to our style of government, and eventually you're going to find out that we are able to trace back to Greece many of our names and terms and theories of democracy all the way go back to Greece. For example, Greece had a Senate, and of course we have a Senate as well. They're the ones that came up with the word democracy, which means ruled by the people. And Aristotle was one of the first ones to study that. There are certain words that we kind of take for granted when we study government, the word state and nation state. The word state with a little s, a lowercase s, is just another word for a country. So when the countries walked in on the Olympics, the athletes did, they were representing their state, their country. A nation is a country that is unified not only by the four qualities of a state, but also by language, cultural background, uh, religion. So, for example, the United States is really hard to define as a nation because we have many languages, many religions. We're not one race. We are a very diverse people, but yet culturally, we share some things in common. For example, uh, baseball, apple pie, and mom. The idea that um, an individual who works hard should be rewarded. Freedom of speech, the right to treat everybody equal. Those are qualities and cultural things, including like the 4th of July, that make us a nation. Whereas, let's take the nation of Israel. It has the four qualities of the state, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, but it also shares a religion, which is Jewish. It shares language, which would be Hebrew. It shares a cultural background that would be the same. Now, a nation state, which you see at the bottom here in red, is that it is a country that has the four qualities of a state combined with all of the qualities that make it a nation: language, culture, and so on. So what are the four qualities of a state? And you're going to see those across the top of your paper. So the first quality is population, okay? This is pretty obvious. That's the people and the citizens that live in a country. If you don't have people, you obviously don't have a state. You don't have a country. You need to have defined territories, defined boundaries. You'd think that that would be kind of an undisputed thing, but countries are still fighting over territories. Territories still to this day change because of war, because of natural disaster, rivers that constantly move. Territories are still in flux. Okay? Sovereignty, probably the hardest word that we have at this time. Sovereignty means the supreme and absolute rule within its boundaries or constitution. It basically is telling you who's in charge. So if we talk about sovereignty in the United States, we would have to say that the state of Iowa has population and territory, but it's not sovereign because the Washington, D.C. is ultimately in charge of certain issues. So sovereignty has to do, is there anything above that particular entity? And the last one is government, the institution in which policies are carried out within a state. Or think about it in terms of an entity or a creation that makes laws. So if you are a state, you have all four features: population, territory, sovereignty, and government. If you are a state with a big S or capital S, that means that you are a subdivision. You lack one of the 4 features. That might be very well Iowa. So look at the following example, and except for the island nation, I forgot to take that off. Look at these states and identify whether they are yes, a state, or no, a state. And then if your answer is no, what quality are they missing? Okay. So if you hit pause, answer those questions. If we continue, the Cherokee Indian Nation is not a state, little s, because it does not have sovereignty. On the reservations, they have people, they have territory, and they have a government, a tribal government. But they are not sovereign because the United States government still rules over them. The Exxon Oil Company is not a state because it doesn't have a population, it doesn't have territory, it doesn't have sovereignty, and it doesn't have government. It's not that at all because it's a company. Canada. Well, I'm fairly sure that I saw Canadians in the Olympics, so that's kind of a clue to me that yes, it is a state. But let's go through the 4 qualities anyway. It has people, they're called Canadians. There's a definable territory. It has a government, it's a governmental parliament, and it has sovereignty. So absolutely, it is a state, little s. Now, Monaco and the Vatican City are 2 examples of what would be considered a city-state. They are both very small entities. They are both what we would consider the size of Sioux Falls or a city. And they have people, they have territory, they have a government, and they do have sovereignty. It just happens to be that their territory is confined within the ideas of a city. Other places that might exist in that way is Singapore. And finally, Afghanistan. This is probably one of the tougher ones because Afghanistan is in a state of flux. But it does have population, it does have territory, it does have a government. Now, whether that government is effective is up to debate. And it supposedly has sovereignty, so it is a state. So here's an example of Canada. As a nation, Canada uses metric weights and measures. That would be an example of sovereignty. They have their own power. They have population. They have a capital. They have a government. Okay, we're going to come back to that in this frame in just a minute when we do an assignment in class on Monday. Okay, so what about ISIS and the Islamic State? Is that a state? Take a moment and think about ISIS. The answer probably would be probably not. It lacks territory. Okay. The last thing we're going to talk on this first one is how a state is born. In other words, how do countries find themselves being hatched? Okay. The first one is the force theory. The nation was born out of the revolution. All of the elements of state were already present. So this is the way that we were born. Obviously, the American Revolution. Okay, we separated ourselves from Great Britain through the use of force. Okay. By the way, if you turn your paper over, that's where you take these notes. Okay. All right. The next one is called the evolutionary theory. This is that a family kind of developed out of a clan. The state developed out of a family or a clan of some kind. So a family started to rule and ruled the people around it, maybe a village, and then the village grew. Ireland would be another example, but many African nations and a few European nations can probably find their birth through evolution. Germany would be another one. A divine right is when you see what would be considered a monarchy. The state developed out of the belief that God gave those of royal birth, a king, a queen, a chancellor, the right to rule. So when you see the word monarchy, we're talking about divine right. They believe that they have the right to rule because they are God gave them that right. And the fourth and final is what is called the social contract theory. The social contract theory is oftentimes seen to be the most significant. The state arose out of a voluntary act of free men. In other words, it's an election. This theory holds that the people are actually the ones that are in charge, and the government serves the will of the people. And these people are the sole source of power. Australia is that way. They became independent because they had an election. India had an election and they became independent, as well as Canada. Now, many of us consider that the United States today is a social contract theory, but that's really not true, because our country was born out of force. Okay, so you should have enough to fill in most of the notes that you've been given. This information will then be used for an activity that we're going to do on Monday. All right, so you should have the front filled out, not the purposes of government at the bottom. Flipping it over, you should have a great deal of that filled out. All right, thank you, and we will see you soon.